Hi everyone, welcome back to What a Time to Be Alive. My name is Amu, and today we're going to be talking about the March for Our Lives campaign and also the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica scandals. So let's get started. So let's just start with the March for Our Lives, which happened yesterday. Across the country, but specifically in places like New York and DC, and there was even one where I live in Richmond, Virginia. So it was basically a march that included a lot of millennials, a lot of young teens that were basically protesting the current gun laws and asking for stricter regulation, which they called common sense gun reform. In response to the school shootings that have happened, specifically in Florida at Stoneman Douglas, and the school shooting that just happened in Maryland about a week ago. And a lot of people came out. I think in New York there was around 170,000 people. In DC there was about 200,000 people that showed up, and this included a lot of celebrities, a lot of political figures. I know Jared Kushner, who's married to Ivanka Trump, his brother was there. Kim Kardashian was there with her kids. And there was a lot of really significant poster boards and stuff that people held up. Like, when I said, there was one specifically, which I had kind of said, but it was, when I said I'd rather die than go to math class, I was being metaphorical or something like that. Or it was a hyperbole. It was really powerful. If you see like pictures of it, just the sheer number of people that were out there and the sheer number of children that were out there and just concern for their own safety, it was really a powerful message to all of the lawmakers here. And it definitely did catch a lot of national attention. So it did what it was intended to do, which is great for the people that organized it. And I agree. Obviously, like Republicans do not want kids to be murdered. They don't support people getting murdered through gun violence. But I think the part of it that they kind of disagree with, and the part that I disagree with, is that banning guns would have fixed all of these issues. Especially in the Maryland shooting that just happened, the shooter was neutralized or killed because the campus security guard had a gun and could stop him. So in that case, gun violence is kind of the hero. And of course, you could argue that if guns were banned, then the shooter would never have been able to get a gun in the first place. But, even if you ban something, like drugs have been banned, but tons of people are hooked on drugs and different opioids. But if someone wanted to get their hands on a gun, they would definitely be able to do so. And in this case, the gun, in a sense, was kind of the hero in trying to stop the situation and being able to stop the killer from killing even more students at the school. And it was, it's obviously still sad for those two people that were injured. One was injured critically. One was injured, I believe, in the leg, so it wasn't critical. It was a flesh wound, but even then, it just never, this situation should not have happened. And I think even the NRA and most politicians are in favor of stricter gun laws and making sure that the wrong kinds of people or people with psychological instabilities can't get their hands on a gun and use it like they were in this situation, because no one wants to see kids getting killed. A lot of those people have children and they would not want them to die because of a mentally unstable person that somehow got their hands on a gun. And so that sentiment is kind of, it's bipartisan. It's across party lines. No one wants to see children killed, but not everyone wants to give up their Second Amendment right in order to do so because they don't believe it would have stopped it. And that's pretty much the side that I'm on as well. But, I think the March for Our Lives, the way that it was organized, the message it had was great. Like, I thought it was amazing how many people came together and were supporting that. And it's definitely something that will be remembered for a long time. And it's also, when shootings have happened in the past, I feel like it just dies out so quickly. But how far this has come for all of the people involved and how the whole country's kind of rallied behind this now. It's like we've never seen it. It's historic, and it's incredible the amount of reach that a lot of that youth and teens can have on the political spectrum and in the political world, even though most of these kids who were at that rally were probably under 18 or just turned 18, and they don't really, they don't have any experience, but they're reaching so many people across the world, across the country, especially, politicians, and it's amazing, and it's great to see that they're participating in the political world around them. So that's pretty much all I have to say about March for Our Lives. There's going to be another march in April. I honestly encourage people to go. I unfortunately couldn't go, even though a lot of my friends are going. I got caught up in some college-related things that I had to do yesterday morning, so I couldn't be there. But I was following it pretty closely on my social media through things that my friends had posted about it. So, yeah. So now I guess we should move on to the Facebook scandal that broke out recently. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of background about where this whole issue started. So back in June of 2014, there was a researcher named Alexander Kogan who developed one of those personality quiz apps that a lot of you have probably seen on Facebook. And it was pretty much heavily influenced, like basically a copy of a personality quiz kind of thing that was made by the Psychometric Center at which is a part of Cambridge University where Kogan was working at the time. And there was around 270,000 people that decided to install Kogan's app onto their Facebooks. And so with this, they could, or Kogan could pretty much access a lot of information about the people that installed it and also the friends of those people that had installed the app. And instead of deleting that information immediately after it was received, which is what was supposed to happen, it was actually stored. And so that database of information that he collected about all of these users and their friends was shared with the voter profiling company that's called Cambridge Analytica, and they basically used it to make around 30 million psychographic profiles about the voters, which basically was 30 million separate pages, if you will, of information about those different people and just personal information about them that really shouldn't have been stored in the first place. The fact that they stored the information in the first place is already a breach of privacy for all the people that were using Facebook at the time, because they had no idea that the information was being stored about them, and they probably didn't understand that Facebook could access the information of their friends too, not just them while they were playing the game. And so it kind of, that just by itself was a huge breach in privacy, but it gets a lot worse when you get into it. So Cambridge Analytica has pretty much been called out for swaying the election results of the 2016 election. And the reason that they've been accused of that is because Cambridge Analytica has a lot of people on their kind of leadership board that have a lot of ties to President Trump. So, for example, there's this woman named Rebecca Mercer who is a contributor to the Republicans and a co-owner of a news corporation. So she's on the board of Cambridge Analytica. Robert Mercer is her father, and he invested $15 million in Cambridge Analytica because of Steve Bannon, who advised him to do so. And another thing is that the Cambridge Analytica CEO was caught on a hidden camera pretty much saying that he would bribe or blackmail public officials around the world to kind of suit a specific agenda. And basically, when I said earlier that they made 30 million psychographic profiles, it pretty much used the information from that to put on very specific ads. So, for example, there was ads about the whole Brexit situation, and they had a lot of ads going out about the Leave side of the campaign, and they also had very targeted advertisements going out about Ted Cruz's and Trump's campaign. So essentially, people that have seen this news now are pretty much saying that Facebook's news feed, which is really powerful and a lot of people kind of pay attention to the news that shows up on there, was specifically targeted to support the Republican side of the campaign and pretty much swayed more voters to vote for the Republican candidate or Trump instead of Hillary. But, I mean, I guess in a way that makes sense, but I don't think it really explains why in the polls that were done leading up to it, Hillary still showed like a landslide win, but that might have obviously been an error because people didn't want to admit that they were supportive of President Trump at the time. Also, there's been news already about the fact that the news feeds in Facebook have really given more attention to Russian propaganda and like the other hoaxes that have been happening that were going on during the election and that are still being looked into, even though it was found that the Trump campaign didn't have any direct ties to Russia's involvement in the election. And I don't even know that it's been confirmed that there was exactly Russian involvement with the election, but there very well could have been. There's also been claims that Facebook allowed third-party or other apps aside from Facebook to access the information that they had. But, users pretty much when they log on to an app, they do give apps permission to utilize their information, but it's not really clear how that's being used. And they probably don't envision that, the people whose friends' informations were taken, they definitely didn't consent to it. So it's still a breach in privacy regardless of the situation. So the way that the Trump campaign pretty much really fits into all of this is that Steve Bannon, as I mentioned earlier, who was Mercer's political advisor when he was on the board, was also Trump's chief strategist at one point, and he was also reportedly vice president of Cambridge Analytica's board at some point. And pretty much the Trump campaign had hired Cambridge Analytica to run the data operations during the 2016 election to try and get information. But of course they were doing so based on information that was illegally obtained, because the fact that Kogan's app sent information to Cambridge Analytica was a breach in privacy, even though the data was acquired through fair means because users consent to their data being used in that sense. That being shared outside of Facebook was a breach. And so the company for Trump's campaign pretty much helped them target a very specific audience and gave them a better way to focus their advertisements to people that would support that view and also spread it even more. So it just greatly helped their advertising plan pretty much through means that were illegal. And whether the campaign knew about it or not is still undeclared as of now. But what made this worse is the fact that Nix, who was the former CEO of Cambridge Analytica, who has now been suspended, was caught on that hidden camera saying that he was saying things that have been done or could be done, and that involved bribery and blackmailing public officials around the world in order to kind of protect their instincts. And Cambridge Analytica denies that he was accurately representing the company and what it does. But I mean, it seems like the CEO would probably know what's going on with his own company. And yeah, but the whole problem is that political ads, when they're played on TV and radio, have a lot of strict restrictions about what they can be about, but those restrictions aren't nearly as strict online. And so having access to all of this data was really beneficial for the Trump campaign because they had such a great resource for them to target their audience specifically and create very specific propaganda and advertisements to get to that audience, but it was done so illegally. And so pretty much Facebook has come under fire because it was their app that leaked all this information about people. And a lot of people, there's so many people on Facebook. It is one of the biggest social media platforms of all time. And people, especially older people, really more than millennials are on Facebook, and they put a lot of information there. There's a lot of trust that was given to Facebook in handling people's information, and people feel really cheated about the fact that it was using their information in a way that they did not consent to at all. And politically, it really would, I think it's going to bring on a lot of regulations, because there clearly needs to be a better way of monitoring how people's personal information is used, and there will likely be a lot of legal consequences that are going to happen for Kogan and Facebook, and hopefully everyone that knew that this was going on and used it. So it's very possible that people that worked on Trump's campaign that knew about this, like Steve Bannon, could be, prosecuted. But, it's well deserved. They obviously knew that what they were doing is wrong if it required them to bribe and blackmail public officials to keep it out of the news and, out of the minds of people and keep them from knowing for this long. But anyway, what this means pretty much for social media as a whole, and specifically Facebook, is the fact that people have really been arguing about regulations on how information is used, especially as technology has been getting more and more adaptive to people individually. There has been a big question about how user information is stored. And now I really think, in my opinion, I think there needs to be a lot more regulation on how user information is handled, because clearly there's not enough oversight on how that information is used by people outside of that company. So there definitely needs to be a change in that, because there obviously needs to be some sort of governmental body that oversees how to protect the information of individuals. This isn't any different in the way that it would be done than, credit card information, social security information, banking information, things like that are preserved and secured when they're used online. User information like, their political affiliations, what they like and don't like, what their friends like and don't like. It's private information that, unless shared by them on Facebook to whoever they want it to be shared with, it shouldn't just be mined and used for gain like it was in this election. And, I'm not on Facebook, and I wasn't of voting age anyway, so I don't think my information really would have mattered. But, if I was in that situation, I completely understand why people don't feel safe, because the information was gathered completely without their knowledge. So it's hard to tell what other information they might have access to and what other social media and other platforms have access to without people knowing, because there's just not enough regulation on how user information is stored and used by other people. I mean, there wasn't really a check to see if that data that was collected by the app initially was deleted as it should have been, or if it was stored, because it has been stored. And this came to light, 3 years later now? No, 4 years. The app was developed in 2014, so it's been 4 years. And that's crazy to me that no one knew. But I guess it's good that it came out at some point, because I think it really opened a lot of people's eyes. Because when you use social media, I don't think anyone really, you hear about it every once in a while. Your parents kind of tell you, like, hey, don't put this online. Don't share your location, all this kind of stuff. But apparently it doesn't matter if you didn't share it, because people just mine it and use it anyway. And there's people that have access to it. So, that was definitely something that came out. And yeah, I think Facebook's in a lot of hot water, but I think it's good that people know. I think everyone needed an eye-opener to see that, this isn't just stuff people say. It literally does happen, and it could happen to you. There's no telling which users exactly were impacted by this, because now there's some statistics that say it was over 50 million people whose information was used, but there's not really a way to tell for sure. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys in this episode, and I will see you guys for the next one in around 3 weeks, actually, because I am going on spring break soon. So, yeah. Bye, guys.